Welcome, everyone. I'm Lauren Hawkins. Thanks for tuning in with us to Spirituality Adventures. We are so glad you're here, and we're very excited about the content we get to share with you through our blogs and podcasts. Spirituality Adventures is made possible by your support. One way you can support us is by liking, following, subscribing, or sharing any of these podcasts or blogs that you like. Another way you can support us is by going to our website, www.spiritualityadventures.com. There you can click the support tab and you can sign up for a monthly subscription or a one-time gift. We appreciate all your support. Now here's Fred.
Welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. This is a non-judgmental place to explore spirituality. And we've been talking a lot about creativity and spirituality. So I've been interviewing some local bands and this is actually my first hip hop artist. I interviewed one jazz singer on this podcast a few weeks ago. But this is my first hip hop performer on this podcast, and I'm so excited to have Derrison Palea here with us today. Derrison, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So I was trying to think back when we met the first time. Do you know how long ago that was?
It was some years ago.
Was it 10 maybe?
Probably something like that.
Maybe 10 years ago?
I'll say about 7.
Okay.
About 7 years.
7. But my memory, you might have met me before I remembered meeting you. I don't know.
Yep, I met you first.
Okay. But I remember a conversation we had. The first time I remember having a conversation with you, maybe that's the way to say it. Uh-huh. You had a Straight Outta Compton t-shirt on.
Yep.
And we were at Vineyard Church.
Correct.
We were in what we called the East Auditorium, if I remember right.
Yep.
And I saw that t-shirt, and I can't remember when that movie came out, maybe 10 years ago or something.
Yeah, about that. I'd say 5 years ago.
Okay.
About 5 years.
Okay.
But they were talking about it before then. This is kind of a big deal.
Yeah. And I had watched the movie and really thought, I thought it was pretty, but I asked you if you thought it was accurate historically, I think is what I asked you.
And they didn't do too bad. I think they captured all the elements that needed to be captured. I think they did a real good job at that because, I mean, you got to go back to that time. It's a different time, when you were pressing up vinyl, and they had cassette tapes going on versus everything being digital now, and plus you got to still make it relatable moving forward. And then, I don't know, I think they did good. It was a good movie if you ask me. And
I remember you saying that. I thought it was good, but I don't have the background that you had to evaluate it, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's for those who are going to be listening who aren't into hip hop. This was a movie that was about the group NWA.
Yep. And
name some of the people that came out of the NWA group, because people will probably know those names.
Oh, they know Dr. Dre.
Dr. Dre.
Eazy-E. Definitely Ice Cube. MC Ren, Yellow, that's pretty much who NWA was. But.
So some big names that came out of that group.
Definitely.
That people know now all over the culture. But tell us about you, Derrison. I want to hear a little bit about your background, where you're from, where you're born, where you grew up. Give us a little peek into what it was like to grow up in your home and where you're from.
I was born in Hawaii, Honolulu, Hawaii. That's kind of where I got my hip-hop name, King Kihei. Because it's actually my Hawaiian name, and we'll get into that story later.
Okay.
And then my dad, he's from South Central Los Angeles. He's a transplant from actually a small rural town called Kokomo, Indiana, but he had moved out there in his childhood and was grew up and raised in that environment. But he met my mom in the Navy, and then eventually we ended up settling down in Kansas City, and that was another culture clash. Coming from a big city to Kansas City was like, it wanted to be a big city, but I know it wasn't LA, I'll tell you that. But it was a good blend. It's like the first time I ever seen cows. It's the first time I remember seeing hay and stuff, and I would never forget getting off of that airport, man. I was like, oh man, I'm in the country. I'm in the middle of nowhere, and then we started driving towards the city, and I was like, oh, civilization, you know what I mean? Like there's people here,
I know.
because when you come from I mean, millions of people. It just, Hawaii's like that too. It's just so many people. It's just, and then to come to, it's definitely a difference. But
flying to an airport that feels like it's in the middle of nowhere, right?
Back then, that was, they didn't have all the stuff they got now.
That's crazy.
And it was definitely, I was like, I don't know where. I really thought it was in the middle of nowhere.
So let me make sure I got this right. So your dad was stationed in Hawaii in the Navy. So your mother's from Hawaii. Your dad was Indiana to LA to Hawaii. They met in Hawaii. Did they get married there in Hawaii or just back and forth?
Back and forth. I actually think, no, they got married in LA.
LA?
Yep.
And so you were born in Hawaii, but like your early childhood, like your elementary school years were...
Yeah, I even went there, elementary school.
In Hawaii?
Yeah.
Which, on
Makalani.
Okay.
It was awesome.
The main island?
Yep, Oahu.
Okay. So give us a little bit of what were you listening to? What do you remember? What were you listening to growing up?
Oh man.
What were the...
Man, I remember, I don't know if I was supposed to be listening to them. We had some cassette tapes. NWA. Ice Cube. Too Short. Bob Marley.
Oh.
Who else we really listened to? That was probably pretty much like the main. Oh, we even had, what other cassette tape? You making me go to cassette tapes, man. I got to look back.
You can jump past that if you want, but at any rate.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I just love to hear.
That was like,
who did you love to listen to? Who were some of your favorite?
Man, I definitely like NWA a lot. Express Yourself, I Ain't the One, Dope Man, Boys in the Hood. I mean, that's still a classic, And that was, I think I had some daddy influence on that. We listened to that. And then, but Bob Marley, man, when you were in Hawaii, that was like the soundtrack for the whole state.
That's
like,
cool.
It didn't matter where you went. It was like, it was, I got to see the power of Bob Marley on the spirit of a person. I said, because man, it would just bring everybody together. It didn't matter what age. It didn't matter. Like when you put Bob Marley on, everyone they got in the zone. They just started feeling good. It was a lot of unity there, every time they came on.
Right.
And then, man, Bob Marley was definitely pivotal in those cool. early years.
So when did you start trying to write?
Right?
Yeah. When did you start?
High school. Started in high school.
Okay.
Kind of was a hobby, and we did this thing called freestyling, or battle rapping. And some people would, you get in a little cipher, and you guys would get together and just kind of just go off the top of the dome, as we call it. And you would just grab words out the air and just go and put them together right there on the spot, So it's kind of an art to that. But I actually started because I had some guys doing it, and I was just like, man, I could do that, that type of thing.
Did it come easy to you?
Yes, but not to the level I'm at now. Because I'm probably sure my first was probably horrible. I probably thought it was cool at the time, but it's nothing like it is now. So I've definitely polished the craft over the years. I'll say that.
It takes practice.
Yes.
It's a skill.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and this is good for me to know because like I grew up listening, prog rock and all this kind of stuff. And I could sing along to the songs I was listening to and the bands I was listening to. But at some point I started getting into hip hop. And I've always tried to stay like in touch with the hip hop world always for a few decades now, but not like I was immersed in it. So I would have my favorite rap songs and I would try to like with nobody listening. Right?
I'm listening. Go ahead.
No. I couldn't. No, like I would try to do it at home alone. And I would go over and over and over trying to get it. And I couldn't, I was terrible at it. And I'm thinking, is this because my brain, what, how do you learn how to do it?
Rhythm.
Maybe that, like, is this a white man problem? You know, I mean, there's a few good white rappers out there.
There are.
But yeah, no, I was wondering though, if it's actually a skill that if I just kept working at it, I mean, maybe not at my age now, but if I just had kept working at it, would I have gotten better? Could I have gotten to a place where I could, because it's poetry to me in motion.
Yes, it is.
And I began to respect, as I tried to do it myself, and then I broke down, I love lyrics. Okay. So I always like to listen to lyrics, and I began to really respect the art form of rapping and hip hop. And I really saw it as poetry in motion.
That's what rap is, rhythm and poetry.
Yes.
So definitely.
Yeah.
But sometimes it gets questionable when you hear the radio, if they're poetic or not, you know. But I'm the same way. I would say when I started, I didn't view it that way. I had to learn that. Actually, over the years, I had a college professor at UMKC tell me what I was doing. I didn't know. She was like, "Did you know those are alliterations?" I was like, what is it? I was like, what are you talking about? What is that? And she was like, and your euphemisms are great. And I said, I don't know what you're saying. I'm just rapping. You know what I mean?
She's breaking it down.
She's breaking it down,
yeah,
but it's tripping me out because it's like, okay, if a college professor is listening to me, but she can understand it, then I didn't even know, you know, it was just, I thought it was cool that if I did this and this and this, and then when I started getting a little more educated on the craft, I started like, whoa, wait a second. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Whoa. So like, then I started reading some poetry, and then I started seeing the similarities, or I listened to one of my favorites, you know, later on in life, like Tupac. You know, when he would say, hey, you got to listen to Shakespeare. I went to go read some Shakespeare. I said, man, this dude is spit some bars in here, man. You know, I was like, look at that. I said, but I wouldn't have ever known if Tupac didn't say that. You know what I mean? He helped bridge that gap.
Shakespeare is dope,
about poetry, you know. I'm telling you, and there's a lot of poets that are really, like, the way they, you know, they play with words. That's what I do. I tell people, like, what do you do? I'm a professional barsmith. You know, they're like, what is that exactly? You know, I play with words like Scrabble, you know, and they're like, what do you mean? I said, I can get any word and I can make you see something different with the word. That's what the lyrics can do. It's art. It's not, it's the ability to make you see something.
Yeah.
You know, that you probably didn't see before or overlooked, or, you know.
Yeah.
I'm big on
beautiful. That. When I went through this 3/4 life crisis, went to rehab, got out, and I've always been a big music lover, always listened to music, but I've been drawn more this last couple of years to poetry. I've been rereading poetry. I've been listening to some of the hip hop stuff that I really like that's poetic. And what I found is that poetry has really hit me. And then the Psalms in the Bible are poems.
Proverbs
and then you have poetry in the Psalms. And I went to some of the dark Psalms in the Psalms of Lament in the book of Psalms that are poetic art forms expressing, darkness, expressing struggle, expressing internal strife, expressing, all these kind of things. And I'm looking at you, and you do this stuff all the time, right?
Yep. I've got a few Psalms like that, as you could say. Definitely.
So when did you first start recording and releasing
Man,
music?
I actually started recording a little bit. I think I was out of high school. And a friend I had, his name was E-Sonic. He's still my friend. But he would have his studio equipment, and I just went in there and started. I was like, hey, how you do this? How you do this? Hey, man, how you do, And then he was like, oh, you just do this. And then we started dabbling with it, and then I would keep messing with it, and eventually he'd fall asleep. And I was like, well, okay, I'll still be dabbling on it, and I kind of was very self-taught on all of it, down to the engineering, mix, all of that, man, because, and I actually started finding I had a passion for it. And it really wasn't just the music, it was just I guess learning something new, learning something that I was like, hey, I can anything I could try, I could do, and I would find out what I could do. And we started mixing some music, and then we formed a little group back in the day called A1 Sickness, and it was actually a pretty good group. You know, we look back and we did good for not knowing what we were doing. We did pretty good, you know, because we had a good. It's about 5 or 6 of us. We got together, we pressed them up on CDs, you know, blank CDs, and
it's like 10 years ago, maybe.
Yep, it was when CDs were still out. That was the day. It was. No, I'll say a little longer than that actually. 2004, 5.
Oh, okay,
something like that. Yeah, and then we were selling them, but I'll tell you that it was an interesting time because we got to learn all the aspects of music. We thought it was just, hey, you just write something down, that's it. No, there's a lot more going on than that, you know, but nobody like taught us, you know. And now we look around, it's kind of crazy because they'll have master classes on all these things, and we didn't have, we just had it was trial and error university. That's the school I graduated from right there. And I learned a lot of stuff, but it was pretty cool because I actually learned what I could and couldn't do, learned my limitations, capacity. And then we had this spiritual bond, you know, all of us as youth, you know, I guess teenagers, but we're still close today. Because of that time, it was kind of like, hey, we were trying to figure out a way to make it, figure out a way to, you know, make something out of nothing. It's kind of the art of it. Yeah. So
give me a little education on the hip hop community in Kansas City. Because I know you got pretty networked and still are, I think, with the hip hop. So over the last 15 years, hip hop in Kansas City, because if I understand hip hop right, it's where you come from, where you presenting your art. There's always been a little bit of hey, this artist is from here. There's always been a little bit of a local culture that hip hop springs out of. Has that been important? And so tell me a little bit about Kansas City hip hop.
Kansas City hip hop, man, there's you think of Kansas City hip hop and true hip, because there are like subcultures. I would say it like that. You got hip hop, you got rap, you know, they're kind of all the same, but there's a different feel to them. Like you would say you have heavy metal, then you got punk rock, and then you got, you know, alternative metal. It's similar to that. But hip hop, man, I'll say, I remember, man, back in the day, we used to have these hip hop and hot wings up at the Peanut, a little local bar down there in, what was that off of? Like 9th Street, like 9th and Broadway.
Okay.
And that was the spot. Everybody would go through there. That was hip hop based.
Different from rap.
Yeah. But it's still rap. If that makes sense. It's just it's a style of rap.
Okay.
Like you have mumble rap, you got trap rap, you got, you know, people just do dance music, you know, but it's still rap, but it's like subcultures. It's all the same pretty much. But man, you would have even people, a lot of people probably heard of Cess Crew. You know, they're pretty big hip hop. They got Sign of Strange Music. But I remember them in there, and man, they were awesome. You know, they're still awesome. I think they're awesome. Like they're top tier hip hop artists, man. When you can wield the words like that, we call them wordsmiths like that, man. And you're like, shh. And then the way they put them together, that's hip hop, Kansas City hip hop. But here's what I do see. I will say, sometimes there's a problem. It's the silo mentality. So there's a lot of silos as far as silo thinking, where it actually prevents Kansas City from, like, as a whole going to that next level as a city, and as far as that, you know. And I will say there are steps to change that now, but I've done shows in other cities, and every time a Kansas City rapper gets on there, there's a difference. They just know, like, our caliber is like, they're like, oh my goodness. I'm like, yeah, we're really good. But the issue is, like, if we would do that here, unite, we'd be on instantly. But then you got to look at the style of like a Tech Nine and what Tech Nine has accomplished. And if you look at it, like, he's the top selling independent artist, like, of all time. So then I've had people ask me, okay, why would you not go to the bigger city or whatever? I don't know. Part of it is if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And part of it is like, I look at it as the iron and sharpening the iron. when you get a lot of that feedback, like, hey, are you good? Are you good? You know, actually help. You're either going to get better or you're not. And I think they asked me, I think I've gotten better because I've been in Kansas City based in here, because when you go do some shows, there's not a lot of people, you know, and then they'll remember it. Or you do big shows and then they're like, what, who's that? You know, there's that dynamic exists as far as hip hop. But and you're saying that because I was blessed to be around people like with Akon's camp, you know what I mean? And I got to see it to that scale, and I got to see the differences, you know, as far as like when you got a whole production team, you got a whole crew behind you, and versus being self-sufficient. And I would say hip hop has changed too, because now it's like independent is the way to go. Back in the day, it wasn't. You know, you had the whole label, you had all that, but now being independent is better because it's more about self-sufficiency. And yeah.
So, who are some of the artists that you really respect that are from Kansas City? Yeah.
Tech Nine, Rich the Factor, Sess Crew, Miss Nicole, JL, myself. I put that in there.
Yeah. You're here.
Will,
you're here because of that.
D Will, MC Reach, you know, Highland, the Heat Mob.
Okay.
You know, yeah, I can name a few.
And you've helped run at least one or more hip hop clubs here in Kansas City. Is that correct?
Yep. I've done brought a few shows here, you could say.
Yeah, tell us about
on the
that.
production side. I got to meet a lot of interesting people, great people, man. I've met what's his name? King Crooked. He's awesome. Crooked Ice and Obi Trice. They're with Eminem's camp. Project Pat, Slick Rick, PMD, Afro Man, Busy Bone. Man, I could go on and on. I met a lot of people. It's a good experience. Rakim was probably one of the coolest people I met. I was like, because to me, you think hip hop, Rakim is like on the Mount Rushmore of hip hop. He's one of the what we call the God MCs. That was a beautiful thing. I'll never forget.
Yeah. That. What are some of the names of the clubs that you worked with here in town?
906, Red, what was that name? The Bat Cave, the Blue Room, Gym Theater, pretty much every club you could think of. The problem with the clubs here, they change names a lot due to the nature of the business, you know. Roxy, Uptown Theater, because like I've done brought artists, work shows all over the city.
I go to the Blue Room a lot, usually for jazz stuff, right? But the 906, is that still going? Are you guys going to be reopening 906?
Yeah, probably will. We're waiting on the pandemic. That kind of put a damper on things. You know, definitely people would call me. I'm like, yeah, I want to wait to, you know, because I don't want to be the guy on the news. Oh, he did this and everybody's sick. No, not on my watch. That's not happening because we care about the people. You know? So,
yeah, all these venues are wrestling with that right now, right? They're
yeah,
like,
it's a different time.
Yeah,
because I mean, all you gotta do is go online now. You know, you can, or they'll do the little office, you know, the office shows and stuff. Yeah, it's a dynamic time, man. A lot of changes are going on, and it's kind of like what works, what doesn't work, you know.
So one of the producers you've worked with in Kansas City is Smart Alec. Is that is that the right way to say it?
Correct.
And how did you guys connect?
We actually connected. He was young. He was still in high school, and he was like 16. But I'll tell you that kid's talent was unreal. I was getting instrumentals from him while I was out in LA. And I was like, man, this kid, you know, and I'm out here in LA listening to producers and stuff. And he was just, I was like, man, we gotta work with this guy. I was like, and then we can, you know, help Kansas City out. That's how I always look at it. Like, what can we do to help Kansas City out? Right. What can we do to make our city, you know, get more notoriety, you know, in the right way, you know? But I've been working with him, man, ever since. And it's awesome watching him develop as a producer. Because like now he's got to be one of the best period in this city. You know, he's worked with a lot of people.
Yeah.
So
I did an interview a few weeks ago with Ben Went, who runs the Rhino down in North Kansas City. And then he does I'm not sure if he does podcast. Matt, I'm going to refer to Matt here for a minute. Does Ben do hip hop stuff on the Ope Radio podcast as well? Yeah. So that might be a good connection I'm just thinking for you and
I'll check
Smart Alec and all that. But yeah, we should hook you up with that because Ben does a podcast with Pitch, the Pitch magazine.
Yeah.
Sponsored it. And so his whole goal is to try to really help profile local bands in Kansas City and give them, an audience, a platform, all that kind of stuff. So it's just another avenue of trying to get the word out, because I've been trying to interview local artists in Kansas City and talk about spirituality and creativity. And I've just really enjoyed it. And I found all different types of spirituality, but everybody has a spiritual bent in their music, in their creativity, and all of that. And so I've really enjoyed hearing. I've gone from punk to there's a band called Listener that they do what they call spoken word. So it's like white guy rap. And
that's the poetry.
Maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe they wouldn't like that. But anyway,
I do spoken word too.
But I think Dan Smith, who is the main guy there, he was doing rap, and then he ended up switching over to this kind of like rock with spoken word. So all of his stuff is rock spoken word, and it's really good stuff. I interviewed one of the guys that plays with him, John Terry. So anyway, fun stuff. I think it'd be fun to connect the dots on some of these things.
I'll tell you, a show we did that was awesome. We did a show at the Voodoo Lounge.
Oh,
it was us doing a hip hop set and a rock band. And I'll tell you, that was probably the funnest show
I bet that was.
Because everyone was like, what? So we just kind of improvised too while we were up there. We had the DJ doing the turntablism.
Yeah.
We had the guitarist like, man, just go ahead, man, just go. And then it was awesome. It's just the spirit of it, man.
It's cool. All right. So let's talk just a bit about spirituality and your music. And then I want to wind back around to a couple of things in the hip hop culture. Okay. But talk to me. What's been your spiritual journey? Has it been were you raised in a certain were you raised in a church? Were you?
No, I was actually. We were raised in Hawaii. We have a different culture when it comes to spirituality. It's funny when I watch Moana, the Disney movie. They talk about Maui. Maui's a shark guy, and we knew him as that when we were kids. We always talked about Pele. Pele if you messed up, Pele would come get you.
Mm-hmm.
We're more tribal with spirituality in Hawaii. I mean, we have a lot of traditions, and we have a lot of respect for nature and the land and our elders and our our spirituality there is way different than the mainland, as I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Because over there, you would learn from nature. You would see certain things. It's like when you look at that ocean, man, I don't care how big you are, when you realize how big you are, and when you look at that ocean, I was like, you would learn certain things from the animals or just the environment. And but when you move to the mainland, I felt it was way more, there's a structure, like forced type of spirituality. Hey, you have to go in here, you have to do this, you have to stand up, sit down, and it was different. It was definitely different for me. And then I had we would go to church too. We would go to church. So that was an interesting dynamic to see, because my parents didn't really force church on us. They kind of let us learn for ourselves, figure it out. But I definitely on my spirituality, Hawaii's got a big imprint on my spirituality, because I kind of see it as a whole picture type deal. Because I look at things and I hear people and I'm like, we call it aloha spirit. What what is your intent? You know, what are you looking to accomplish? Like, I've seen people do things, but is your intent really pure for this person? You know, do you really care about this person? And I've seen that where it doesn't happen at times, and it'd be religious folk, you know, I would say. But then I learned that's not everyone, you know. No matter what you do, wherever you go, you're always going to have good and bad in it, I think, you know. And as far as my spirituality, man, I definitely believe in a creator, a higher power. It's got to be, you know. If I look at the earth, I'm like, man, you just take one element out. That's it. Like nothing exists. And I'm like, I know we got science. We're out here looking all over, you know, trying to find different planets. But I'm like, just to, you know, I don't care how much history and science you got. I'm like, just for the earth to be here, it's to me, it's like, there's got to be something way beyond, you know, because it's just so perfectly, just a little blue ball in the middle of space, you know, as we call space, but nobody even knows what that is really, the dark matter, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's just too just too coincidental, you know. And then I've also witnessed things in life. I would say, you know, with my faith, man, I definitely believe in God. I said, because there's a lot of reasons probably why I shouldn't be here, you know. But I think God is the only one that saved me multiple times, you know. The first time was probably the cancer. When I had that as a baby, you know. And back then they had the technology and things they do now, you know. It probably what I had is still kind of rare today, you know. But yeah, the fact I couldn't, they said I wasn't gonna make it, but I still made it.
What kind of cancer was that?
Wilms tumor.
When you were how old?
I was 3 months.
Wow.
They took said my mother saw my diaper was full of blood. That'd be a sight to see as a mother, you know. I'm not talking about this. I'm talking the whole diaper, you know. And then yeah, then they end up taking my kidney out. Yeah, you had to have some faith then, you know, for me to get through. Somebody was praying for me. I'll say that.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. So I love that. You know, the spirituality that you were exposed to in Hawaii.
Yeah.
It might be similar to, might be some parallels to, like, say, some of the Native American spirituality that you would have found here before.
Yeah, we have spirit animals.
Right.
Call them amakuas. You know.
Yeah.
Same thing like this.
Yep.
These shells. You know, we have called the mana, and it's funny because when y'all read in the Bible, they got the bread. You know, it's like, wait a second. You know what I mean? It's like, it might be something going on here, but the life force. You know, just like the bread is the life force. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've always been attracted to I read a lot of Native American spirituality as a teenager, actually, and was always interested in that kind of stuff. And of course, then when I started working on my theology degrees and all that kind of stuff, I studied all religions, and then I studied, even the ancient Near Eastern religions. And of course, then that got me into some of the, when I started going to Africa, I started learning about some of the tribal stuff there. And so it's just always been really fascinating to me. You at some point, at some point you started going to church, and how did Jesus fit into all of that spirituality stuff?
I went through a very bad time. I call life, it was a catch-22. And it's funny because it's like, if you don't catch the ignorant youth by 22, the trajectory of their life, you know, will be drastically going in whatever direction they're at by that time. Because, you've had enough time out of high school, college, if you go college, or whatever route you go through. Like, to me, that is a pivotal point in a young man or woman's life. As far as figuring out the world, you know, about 22. I got a saying, I said, life's a catch-22. You seldom see a black live past 22, flash 22s. Now he's on the rims, flash 22. You know, life's a catch-22, you know, because I've seen a lot of destruction, you know, by the time I was 22. And what I learned, I went through a very bad time. I lost everything. I was homeless. I lost all my money, lost a lot of friends, lost And I even had a girlfriend I was with. She had got killed, during this bad time. Went through a lot. And then what I learned during that time, because man, I would say I was what they call a hothead, a young hothead. I would, man, I was a rough, violent guy. If I would have to analyze it at that time. But what I started learning is like nothing good came from it. No matter what, it was always, it would get matched with some more negativity. You know what I'm saying? It was just a spiral of negativity, everywhere. And I started asking those serious questions, about my life. Like, what? There gotta be something different. I gotta do something different. What am I doing? What am I not doing right? Or when you're sitting there, you have nothing. You have no money. You can't eat. You're sleeping in park benches. I learned a lot. Something just hit me, And I think what I saw was that my foundation was never going to work because God wasn't in the foundation of anything I was doing at the time. And it kind of hit me then when I was looking up at the stars, man. I tell people, I was like, dude, I'm always going to be good. I said, why? I said, man, the stars are my roof. I was like, I'm okay. God provided the earth. Every shelter, I got shelter. God provided shelter. You know what I mean? I'm just looking at the world wrong. I'm looking at everything wrong, So it's how I looked at the world is what helped me start learning. Like, I wasn't looking at it from a godly way. I was looking at materialism, consumerism, status, ego, pride, like, oh, what, does these things really matter? None of it really mattered, when I was there. And what I learned was when I started, kind of looking back at how I got there, I said, man, I didn't incorporate God in like nothing, and nothing I was doing. It wasn't there. So I said, you know what? Let me try that. Let me try something different. So we actually got to link up. What really helped big time was there was this, I had got a plate of food when I was homeless, and I was kind of at my wit's end. And I said, you know what? I said, I'm just a ghost in the system. I can go do whatever. I know how to, I said, it doesn't matter. I got to the breaking point. I was like, it doesn't matter. I don't even care, And then actually this girl gave me a plate of food. It was a big old white plate, had some gold trim on the thing. It was some white gravy on chicken fried steak, mashed potatoes, and green beans. I remember the plate because that's how important that was at that time. Because, when you don't have no food, you're getting, I said, to get a full meal, man, what that did, it was crazy because like how I was thinking at that time before I got that plate was not good. But when I got done eating that plate, like I had the itis, that's what we call it. And I was like, I don't even want to, I'm good. Like, cause it just brought me down from all of that. It was getting a full meal, getting actual sustenance. And then it just kind of like, wait a second, man. You know what I mean? Like, what am I doing? So I actually ended up helping Brandon Ellington. He does a Feed the Homeless event every year. He's our 3rd district councilman. But definitely started rocking with him because I knew what that does to a person. That can change. If it could change me, how I was and how I was thinking, and I know it could do the same for other people. Actually, I started learning like, man, when you give to other people, you give back to them. It makes you feel good. It might sound cliche, but it's true. It's very true. It started helping me. I guess part of my testimony, they call it as what's your testimony,
Yeah.
And God working through me, man, he definitely took me from some very low places, and he's just showered me with grace and favor and abundance. But it had to start with me though. It had to start with me actually just say, you know what? Go ahead because I've tried everything else. And it's not working. I said, but as soon as I incorporated God, it seems to like everything just gets bountiful.
Yeah.
It just multiplies. And I think a lot of that too is based on how we look at the world.
Yeah. Good. So when we met, I remember, well, for some people who might be listening in that might be from the Vineyard Church, they might be thinking, do I know this guy? But you actually wrote a rap or a whatever spoken word deal for one of our Easter services, right?
Yeah, it's doing pretty good.
Yeah. and perform that, which people loved it. And, you know, it wasn't like there was a huge audience of, you know, people who listen to rap music all the time, but I had country music fans who were saying, you know, I'm not sure. I think rap's not so bad. That's pretty good. You know, it's so funny. But, yeah. So, let's talk a little bit about your King Kihei.
So we'll go back to the jazz Blue Room. Glenn North. He used to do these jazz poetry jams, and I would go in there and do spoken word. And that's actually why I would work on my craft as a lyricist, as an artist. You know, I would go to the poets. Because, I mean, you know, poets are, man, poets change the world. Because if sometimes people, you know, you see the speeches, you see Obama talking, Biden, Trump. I don't know how poetic Trump is, but he is in his own way. That's his own personal thing. But great speeches, like throughout time, they're poetic. All of them. You know what I mean? And I was like, man, because the ability of the power of words, you know. So I would go there to work on my craft. I used to go by an artist named Dirty D. That was kind of a street name, you know, that they gave me or whatever, because I'll get down and dirty if I got to, you know. But I actually used it as a different way. It meant divine intervention relayed through you daily. That's what it stood for with me. Also, it's synonymous to man comes from dirt. So it was a way for me to humble myself. I'm kind of arrogant, you know, they say that, but you got to have the confidence. I said, but as also a filter, because I would tell them, yeah, that's my name. And people would like automatically judge me right off the bat. They wouldn't hear me. They wouldn't take the time of day or anything to hear anything I got to say just based off of my name. That was a good learning experience. Like, man, that's how people, okay, you know, on the surface, you know, not everyone, but a good amount of people. But Glenn North, he said, look, man, he asked me like 10 times. He's like, dude, he goes, what you're saying is so awesome. Blah, blah, blah. He's like, you got to change your name or something. I can't get stuck on this name. I was like, what? I was like, but that's, you know, I'm like, I got this whole point of why I'm doing it. And I was like, man, but he actually challenged me to look deeper in myself, which was awesome. You know what I mean? Nobody really wants to do that at the front. Hey, you know, you want to stop doing this? Just do this. You're like, you know, it was kind of like that. But I changed my name. I started studying myself and more so, who am I? You know, I asked that question, what am I doing? What's my purpose? You know, and my name is my middle name, Hawaiian name, is Kihei Manu. And when you translate it for what its meaning is in Hawaiian, it actually means God's armor. I was like, whoa. You know what I mean? Like, that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of crazy.
That's good.
And I put the king there because actually my family is related to the monarchy. You know, Queen Liliuokalani, the whole lineage, you know. Okay. And that's why I do that, because it's like, well, it's me. This is who I am.
Excellent. Yeah. So people who find your music on SoundCloud, are you under King Kihei?
King Kihei, yep.
On Spotify,
Tidal, Pandora,
Apple, all that,
yep, everything.
And so you've got a lot of music out there. And one of the things I often get asked, because I'm always encouraging people to listen to hip hop, and they know I like it and stuff like that. And then they'll go, well, what, you know, why is there so much F-bombs? Why do they use the N word? Help some of my friends out there to understand that a little bit. I've heard some rock and roll where they're cussing in there. I know, exactly. I know.
I would say this definitely ain't the music for the librarian, you know, but frustration. And sometimes, I mean, in life, anybody, that's just the word you got to use sometimes. You know, when you're trying to get your point across, you're talking, you're like, you know what, man? F it. You know, like I said, that's that. Now for the N word,
it's my anger word. Like when I'm really like blowing up with anger.
4-letter, there's a bunch of them. you can make combinations. You know what I mean? I learned like, oh, you can use this one and this one. And I've heard some different ones. I was like, man, that's original cuss word. I like that. But the N word, you know, that's a very sensitive thing, even in the hip hop culture.
Yeah, explain that real quickly.
So part of it, like I tell people when they ask me, you know, why you say the N word? I say, I'll tell you this. I said, the first time I heard that word, I was called it.
By a white guy.
Yeah. I didn't know. Yeah. We didn't call each other that. I didn't know what it meant, but also it's based upon your environment. Because when I went to different environments, it was a different dynamic that existed. you know, and we would call each other that. But we would call each other it in a form of endearment. Like, what's up, Ma? I ain't gonna say that. You know, I said, why? Because that was the lingo. That was where we were at. That was our base. I said, but we weren't necessarily the most educated on the word. We didn't understand Negas. We didn't understand Nigeria. We didn't understand any of that. You know what I'm saying? We also didn't understand that just, you know, back in Americans' early history, you know, the slave masters would call us that. But they was actually calling us that as a mockery. Because Negas and Negas, we was kings. And people don't know that history. But think about it. If you're a king, but you're working on a plantation for a slave owner and they're making fun of you. Oh yeah, go ahead and clean my toilet, King. You know what I mean? Which I have cleaned toilets before, you know. My name's King. But anyway, but that same type of thing, but we weren't educated enough on that dynamic to understand. So it's definitely an interesting topic. In my opinion, I'm like, man, the mockery of it, it's like we got a word now, like you used to mock us that you can't say now. Which is kind of ironic, if you ask me, just on a historical context. Like, you can't say that word. Even though we were called that, you know, on the plantations, you know, with no type of hesitation, like, oh, da, da, da. And then they got assimilated. And also when I, you know, because I play with words. Now, the same thing can go with any English word because I understand Anglo-Saxon. Like, I understand letters. You know, some letters didn't come into existence till later on, you know. And then sometimes we get so wrapped up in the word that we don't understand the meaning of words and the power of words. Because sometimes, I mean, I've heard people cuss in a lighthearted, endearing way. Mm-hmm. And I've heard them cuss in a very malicious way. Sure. Now, it's the exact same word. For example, the word see. What do you see? I see water. And a Mexican guy going like this. That's what I say when I hear see or a letter. Mm-hmm. You know, when you play with words, sometimes we get it out of context because of the meaning of it. But that's why it's such a sensitive word. I say because you have a whole group of people that understand the meaning of the word to where they understand it. You got other people that understand it to a different level. And then it's all about perception. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those, I'm that's my opinion on it, but everybody's got different opinions based on what they know and understand too.
And I've asked this question to other friends of mine who use the word in rap and hip hop and stuff like that. And another one thing they pointed out is that if you had a group of POWs, you know, prisoners of war who go through hell together,
they gonna say
and let's say their oppressors used a derogatory word toward them, but they survive it. They're come out of it. Yeah. Then they almost use that word as a badge of honor amongst themselves because they survived the oppressor, and then they almost flip the word and use it now. But it's only appropriate to use if you survived it and if you lived through it.
Correct.
Is that a good one?
That's a great one.
Yeah. That's another angle to that thing. All right. Well, let's. Man, I could talk so long with you, but I would like to hear. I would like you to close our time with one of your. You want to do a spoken word?
Yeah, I can.
And
let's see.
And I want to encourage people to check out your work under King Kihei, either on SoundCloud or Spotify, Apple, all the different digital platforms that they can do that at. And we didn't get to the community garden thing too.
Yeah, come on.
Oh wow. Anyway, give us just a little clip about community gardens. I forgot.
Man, I'll tell you, we actually got to incorporate that with spirituality.
Yeah.
Because like I said, when I was homeless, I didn't have $1 to go to McDonald's, you know, anything, and I'm pretty smart, but that's when I realized how smart I really was. I was like, I can't eat. Like, how smart are you if you can't eat? You know, like this, there's like basic things in life you need. You need water, you got to breathe, you got to eat food. I got all this education and I can't eat. I was like, that's the smartest thing ever. You know, it's me being facetious. Now, I had some gardeners that pulled me to the side, some farmers. And they were like, hey, you hungry? I was like, yeah. And they took me to a field right there off. It was off 27th and Prospect. They were doing some urban farming. Went over there. I was like, oh, these are peppers, and I was helping them pick them. Peter Piper was picking peppers, right? And I went over there and I was like, wait a second. It started clicking. I was like, what? I'm like, we pay for, like, I'm doing the math in my head. Like, I pay for this. And this dude's got like 1 million peppers. Okay, it's not 1 million, but it sure felt like it at the time. And I was picking them. We had these big blue tubs and we're putting them in there. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. You know what I mean? I'm like, as I'm watching how it grows, I'm like, this just grows. We ain't got to do nothing. Like if you go to the woods right now, you're going to might find some morel mushrooms or something. You know what I mean? You didn't grow those, there's strawberries, there's all types of food out there, but we aren't educated enough to know it. So I did it because it helped me actually see God. And I have I talk about the Garden of Eden. Like I play with words. I'm like, that's where I was eating. I was eating in the garden. You know what I mean? And I look at it like that because actually, there's a lot of parables in the Bible that talk about food. It's a lot. And then from my understanding, reading the Bible, when Jesus came back, what did he come back as? I'm going to ask you that.
Yeah.
I think he came back as a gardener.
Well, that's what the lady mistook him for, right?
That's what I'm saying. So I'm like, wait a second. He might have been working through me and the food. But I've learned more. I would say I learned more about life through gardening than anything in school. I said, because I can learn how certain vegetables grow. Everyone's different, but they're the same. Some bloom later, some blossom later. How you water it's so much. It's unbelievable. So we do that to teach the kids, and we teach the kids because when you grow food, you actually see life. You're dealing with kids. All they see is death and destruction. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat.
It's like
that.
in the core,
yeah.
Especially,
that's all you see. And. Yeah, but when they see life, it does something to them. It changes their perspective on life because it's like, that's growing right there. I remember one time I went, we call these trap houses. I went over there and the guys were over there. We have slang. We out here eating. I said, you not eating? I was like, what do you mean? So I grabbed some onions out the ground in front of them and started eating it. And they all looked at me. They gave me this look like, this dude is nuts, man. We must have sold something to him, And I was like, but they started getting it, later on. They're like, wait a second. I was like, yeah, man. I was like, we're selling the wrong product. So
this is to help children in the core.
Absolutely.
Begin to connect with nature, spirituality, things that are living and alive and growing and with purpose and meaning. And
absolutely.
Excellent. All right. So what are you gonna do for us here?
Just being video, like visually.
Yes.
Dang, because I got one I just wrote. That's pretty awesome.
But some people will listen only. Some people will listen and watch.
No, I don't like to read, but I'll have to do this one because it's so fresh. But I think it's a good one if I could do one. That's all right.
Yeah. What's it?
Let me see. It's called Oceans.
Oceans. Okay.
Yeah. Let me see here. You'll hear that one coming out soon. Yeah.
Your newest album is what? Educated
Ignorance.
All right.
Yeah, definitely. Because I'm educated, but I'm ignorant, just like everyone. But I'm also going to educate us on our own ignorance at the same time. So, Oceans. Blue skies reflecting off the ocean. Coasting through life. Puffing while I'm floating. Above all the commotion. Soaring like an albatross, but any moment can dive beyond your average stars. Sit back and watch. I can teach you how to fish, but skimming the surface, you only swallow spit. The shallow-minded lack purpose and don't know how to swim, cause their fear of immersion is what they're drowning in. Heart pounding wind, they ain't sound within. Drowning in doubt, you know how loud that is? Puffing on clouds of piff, getting lost in space, trying to find yourself but can't recall the thoughts erased. An unconscious state of mind, call it misery. We all been led to take it for granted, digitally. Lyrically, they've been pencil whipping this industry. My fingers bleed for the digits my N-words didn't see. Making profits off ghosts, writing our history. Colonizing our minds to let the trigger squeeze. Trying to be number one, don't let them finger me. Redefine what it means to lift a finger. We lend a helping hand, even on bended knee. They want to cap a nick for anti-Semitic speech, but act as if cannons ain't how they measure me. Like a timpani, watch me drum up emotions. Pulling strings like symphonies with the notes I'm composing. Algorithmically, no, my flow like the ocean. Gentle and serene, tumultuous and ferocious. Draw a line in the sand to set up the boundaries. If you ain't righteous within, won't get it out me. Lived a life full of sin, but angels surround me. Taught me how to win when the devil tried to reroute me. I know the path less traveled, that's where they found me. Footprints in the sand, life lessons and steps to ground me. Look up to the clouds, we so above, so below. You can't defeat me if you don't come from the soul. Lace you with game, show you a new balance. Barefoot through terrain that bruised fabric. Going against the grain and pain, a smooth callus. Proving old mind frames change through new habits. Who knew a palace could start as a sandcastle? Just imagine the thoughts and plans that outlast you. You have to be the first, break the cycle. I know it hurts, them waves crashing inside you, ripping apart the people and things you're tied to. That water is vital just like the sky's blue. Don't need to cry, you can use your inner voice. It speaks volumes as you move through this liquid void. Ocean.
Awesome. Yay.
Thank you.
Good stuff. All right. Well, thank you, Derrison,
Thank you.
for joining us.
I got to work on my interviewing.
And we really appreciate it, everybody. Join us next time. We're glad you joined in. And that's all for Spirituality Adventures on this episode. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again for tuning in. Remember to visit our support page at www.spiritualityadventures.com. If you like what you heard, be sure to share it and leave a comment. Thanks again. Have a great day.
Harvey Media Production.